Guys, welcome to today's show. Today we're going to have a great episode with Randy Pixler of Black Timber Outfitters out of Utah. We're going to be talking primarily about the San Juan unit for elk and for deer. We're going to be going over some of the draw odds and statistics and how those hunts are for elk, for archery, for muzzleloader, for early rifle, and for late elk, as well as we're going to be covering that area for deer, as well as the bear and lion hunts that Randy and his partner Josh Butcher do at Black Timber Outfitters. I want to thank them for their time and coming on here and sharing their knowledge with us. I also want to thank you guys, the listeners, for all your support, and I want to urge you to send me an email if you have any questions, comments, or if you want to hear anybody on the podcast. I love hearing from you guys. You can do that at jscottoutdoors@gmail.com. You can follow along our adventures on Instagram at jscottoutdoors, my new website, jscottoutdoors.com, and on Facebook, J Scott Outdoors. It's my business Facebook page, J Scott Outdoors. Guys, I want to thank my sponsors, GoHunt.com Insider, Kuiu, and the Outdoorsman's, and Phone Scope. I want to thank those four sponsors. And if you look down in the show notes, you can see by using the J Scott promo code and the J Scott 16 promo code, depending on the company, you can get some great discounts with these companies. I want to thank them for their support. Let's get right to this episode. I want to remind you guys that the Utah draw applications for big game are due on Thursday, March 2nd, and just make sure you get your applications in. Utah is a great state. You can buy a hunting license and apply for all of the species across the board. You can do it online, and you can do it with a credit card, so it's a great state to apply in. And like we've talked in the last couple episodes, you can actually draw with very little point some of these units. So hope you enjoy this episode. Let's get right to it, and thank you for your support. Welcome to the J Scott Outdoors podcast. Today I've got Randy Pixler of Black Timber Outfitters. Black Timber Outfitters operates mostly in Utah in the San Juan unit. Is that correct, Randy?
Correct, yep. San Juan and LaSalle are the two units that we do the majority of our stuff on. And
you actually live in Cortez, Colorado, which is just across the state line there on the Colorado side, correct?
Yeah, I'm about an hour from the San Juan unit, so closer than most Utahns.
Gotcha. And your partner is Josh Butcher in the guide service?
Correct, yep.
Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself, a little bit about your background and your passions, what you love to do?
Sure. So I'm 34 years old, and I've got three wild little boys. Hunting is definitely my passion. I enjoy hunting myself too, but honestly, since I've been probably 18, 19 years old, I actually have taken way more pleasure in taking someone out and getting them their first turkey or deer, although I do hunt for myself a little bit, I've found that I actually enjoy way more guiding and taking other people to get a trophy of a lifetime, which fortunately the units we hunt on are pretty trophy units, so it's really fun.
Yeah, tell me what it's like. You operate there a lot on the San Juan. Is that mostly public ground, or do you also have private ground? How does that work with your hunts?
Sure. So the elk and deer both right there in San Juan County have limited entry units. The elk unit is called San Juan Elk Ridge, and it is 90% public ground, National Forest and BLM. And then the deer unit is just the Elk Ridge unit. It is also 90% public. We also do the general season deer hunts on the San Juan unit for deer, a little bit of turkey, and then we run bear and lion on both units. So very little private land stuff.
Gotcha. So your Would you say if you had to choose, would you hunt elk, deer, or chase those hounds around? What's your number one passion?
Oh, it would be a tough choice, but probably would. I'd probably go with the hounds.
And how does
It
the
would be
season
tough.
how does the season work in Utah as far as lion hunting? Is there a liberal season like Arizona has, or is there certain dates and they shut it down on quotas? And the same question with bears.
Sure. So the lion is year round. You can basically run year round. Obviously, there are better months to hunt in. We typically do the majority of our lion hunting between October and April. Not only because it's a little bit cooler, sometimes there's snow, but in the heat, it gets really tough to trail and run lions. And also, you find yourself being messed up by the bear. Once May comes around, our hounds run both bear and lion, so it's kind of hard to tell them to quit chasing a bear when you're running a lion. So,
And the bear season in Utah, it's not over the counter, correct? You actually have to apply for that.
in Utah, there are a few harvest objective units, but the units we hunt in are limited entry, and they're actually pretty limited entry, very limited numbers of tags. Takes a little while to draw, but we are chasing and killing trophy class bears.
And the lions, so when you have a hunter and you're out running the dogs and they start taking off after a bear, do you just go get the dogs and pull them off and try and get them back on chasing lions?
Yeah. Unfortunately, the bear puts off a lot more scent than lions. So typically, if you're running a lion and they switch to a bear, they're more than likely not going to switch back to the lion, or if they're in the same area, you're almost always going to end up on the bear. So that's why it usually becomes pretty difficult running lion once you get in like those May through October months.
What are you guys seeing right now as far as your weather patterns, and have you started to thaw out? I understand a couple weeks ago you actually had some really warm temperatures, but it's cooled back down. What are you seeing overall as your snowpack, and is it above normal? Where do you sit right now?
Sure. So here in southern Utah, southern Colorado, we have received a ton of moisture this winter. A lot of it actually has been rain throughout the winter, almost the entire month of January when everybody else was getting snowstorms. We were getting rainstorms. So our moisture situation is great. We're actually thawed out, almost dry dirt. It's a little bit of mud left, but a couple more warm days and it's going to be dirt. Now the mountains and the high country definitely still have a great snowpack, well above average snowpack. So really the perfect situation. Now northern Utah, they've actually got hammered this year. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure up in northern Utah they were actually doing some feeding programs for the deer because they were starting to lose some deer. They've actually in Utah, I don't know if you know this, but they implemented a statewide shed hunting ban until April 1st because of the stress that the animals are under this year.
Yeah, and I know that's been a hot topic there in Utah. From an outfitter's perspective, what's your take on the overall shed ban?
I don't know if this is an outfitter's perspective or this is just mine. It wouldn't bother me if that was the case every year. Obviously, we all love to pick up sheds. I love to be out in the woods in the wintertime, but when we're chasing and harassing and stressing these animals and they're starving to death, freezing to death, I'm perfectly fine with not getting out there until April. I think if more people would do that anyways, the shed hunting would be a little bit more enjoyable anyways. So
yeah, it's kind of what I'm hearing across the board. I mean, there are some people that are upset about it, but I think most everybody, when they really sit back and think about it, that they realize it's important that those animals aren't super stressed. Let's shift our topic here to elk, and elk specifically on the San Juan. The San Juan is kind of the crown jewel of elk hunting in Utah. I know it's arguable. But most that you talk to always put the San Juan in the top, 1, 2, or 3, and most that I talk to put it as number 1. What have you seen? You're 34. What have you seen with the San Juan? And is it on an upswing? Is it just plodding along like normal, or what kind of trend as far as quality of bulls are you seeing there on the San Juan?
Sure. So I've been hunting on the San Juan since 2004, 2005. When I first started guiding and hunting over there, it was climbing and close to peak. I would say 7, 8, maybe even 9. Really, the entire state of Utah was just unreal. I mean, they were just harvesting giant bulls on every unit. It definitely took a downward. Everything did. I would say the San Juan went down in quality the least amount. It's always still had phenomenal quality. I would say 9 through 12, 13. And then in these last 3 years, it's actually picked back up and kind of leveled off. Still great trophy quality. It seems like every year when the seasons are over, we feel like most of the big bulls get harvested, and then the next year, lo and behold, we've got a whole new crop of great 370 plus bulls.
And you talk about 06, 07, 08, 09, just unbelievable quality in Utah. Is the reason for the decline in quality strictly related to the amount of tags that were increased and killing too many bulls, and that kind of ground checked them, so to speak, and brought the quality of bulls? It seemed like you guys were killing, 10, 12, 14 bulls a year over 400. Now it seems like, there's 2 or 3 that are killed over 400. Is it just from a tag numbers specifically, increase in tag numbers?
I don't think so. I think the division definitely manages for an age class, and so when they start getting above that age class, then they do increase the tags, and there was a tag increase there, and so that probably played a small role in it. My honest opinion is, we're getting too good at what we do. I mean, there really are, in the day and age of trail cameras and just 1,000-yard rifles, we're getting too good at killing animals, and so guys are getting really, really good at hunting these animals. Even average hunters are killing giant animals with, I mean, that's a controversial topic. This is just my thoughts, but with the technology we use, we're getting good at it.
So the hunters are getting better, and so that means that they're just whacking more of the bigger bulls, and you think that has every bit as much to do as raising tag numbers in your specific unit?
I wholeheartedly believe so, yes.
Okay, I'm looking, Go Hunt Insider is a title sponsor of this podcast, and part of the Insider, they have the draw odds, and I'm looking at the San Juan specific here, looking at the unit, and it looks like the last year there was an applicant that put in with 21 points for the archery hunt, and he drew that tag. And then there's only 2, there's 13 resident tags and 2 non-resident. One of the non-resident went in with 21 points, and then the other non-resident tag went with 10 points. And there were actually 32 people with 10 points that put in. There were 19 with 11 that didn't draw, 26 with 12 that didn't draw, 13 with 13 points, 13 with 14, 7 people with 15, 5 people with 16, and 4 people with 18. no people with 17 points applied, one person with 19, and no people with 20 points. And what's interesting about that is that people need to understand is that one tag that went to the 21 holder, that's going in the max pool, but then when there's two tags, there's one whole tag that goes in the random draw, correct?
Correct, yeah. So, and it's 50% of the tags go to a max point pool, and the other 50% go into a random pool. So anybody in that maximum category are allotted those max point tags, and then the other ones are random. So really somebody with 1 point could have just as easily have drawn that tag. Well, not just as easily, but could have drawn that tag. Once you get out of the max point pool, basically your bonus points are the number of tries you get at it. So if that tag holder that had 10, his name was basically in the hat 10 times. So the gentleman that had 19 points had better odds, but not much better odds.
Yeah. Actually, I think you mean 21 points that drew it, meaning he was in the max point pool, so he drew. But then
he was guaranteed,
he was guaranteed. The other tag went random. So
yep.
As far as when guys, are in that 21, 20, 19, 18, 17, they got to start really using this, Go Hunt Insider chart to see, no one applied with more than 21 points, and that guy that put in drew. And nobody applied with 20 points, and there was one guy that drew with 19 points. So one would say that, okay, the guy that put in last year with 19 points, he will have 20 points this year, and he's in the driver's seat probably for that tag that's in the max point pool. But then there's four right behind him at 18 points. So if you're sitting on 18 points, you basically have a 1 in 5 chance of getting that tag. As soon as that 19-point guy gets out, your odds go up even more.
Yeah, we use the Go Hunt app also. This time of year when the application period is open, I find myself either hitting it or calling Josh nightly after having conversations with both residents and non, when they're telling us how many points they have, and we just pull it right up and, well, it's really nice when you can tell them, if you'll do this, you're guaranteed. For instance, I've been in communication with a gentleman that he wants to rifle hunt, and he's getting up there in age, and honestly, in his point situation, he could potentially be 20 years out, even as a resident, if he's an unlucky guy. But if he'll switch to muzzleloader, and we talked about this, he will be guaranteed a tag, and Go Hunt is what tells us that, and so I think he's actually going to switch. It really is a great thing, and so he's going to switch, and he'll probably be hunting muzzleloader elk with us this year.
Right on. Let's talk for a second about your deer, and I believe the San Juan is a limited entry deer unit. Am I correct in that?
Yeah, Elk Ridge. So it's called San Juan Elk Ridge, and then there's a general unit it's called Abajo Mountains. That is a general hunt. So.
Okay, so explain to the listeners the difference between a general deer hunt and a limited entry deer hunt.
So both of them you still have to draw for the tags. Limited entry is a far less number of tags. Some of them are extremely limited entry. The unit we hunt is that way. Elk Ridge, I think they give, and I haven't looked this year's numbers up, but it's usually between 20 and 25 rifle tags, 10 archery tags, 10 muzzleloader tags, and it's a big unit, so it's very limited entry, very trophy class hunt. The general side, and this is the case in most of Utah, is a much larger number of tags, but you're also going to encounter more hunting pressure, more hunters. You still have to draw a general tag. In years past, it's been almost a lock. that you're going to draw one every year. Here in the last few years, we've actually been seeing it's, I would say 70% of the time, and I didn't look the odds up for that, but 70% of the time you're going to get a tag, but there is, every couple of years there's a chance you're not going to get drawn.
Yeah, I'm looking at the Go Hunt Insider Utah draw for San Juan Elk Ridge, the October 21st to 29th, the rifle tag, and it looks like there's 25. Last year there was 25 resident tags and 3 non-resident tags, and the highest point holder was 18 points, he drew. The next highest point holder was 16 points, and he drew. And then it dropped all the way down to, I would assume, then the random pool drew with 8. The one question I would have is, I've been applying for limited entry deer points back when they, before non-residents, you could only apply for elk or deer. You had to pick, and then they changed it where you could apply for elk and deer. I've been applying for limited entry deer since then, but I've never applied for general season deer. Am I missing out on points, or do you not get points with the general draw?
You do, and so they actually word it differently, but it's the same thing. The limited entry stuff, it's actually called a bonus point. The general season, they call it a preference point. You do accumulate for both. They are completely separate points, though. They don't combine.
So I can't use my limited entry. If I wanted to draw a general season, I can't use my limited entry deer for general. And that was one thing I made a mistake on, is I didn't realize that I needed to be applying for general season and limited entry. That way, if I ever wanted to draw a general, I would automatically have enough points. But what you're telling me is, for most of the general season, you can draw it on the first year, and if not, maybe the 1 or 2 preference points. Correct?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. And do you guys guide for both the general deer season and the limited entry deer, or just the limited entry deer?
We do for both.
Okay, and so you guide the Abajo, which is the general season, and then you guide the Elk Ridge, which is the limited entry season or unit?
Yeah, correct. We do both of them.
How do you see the quality of bucks from one to the other? I mean, over the years, what's the difference?
Sure, it's significant. So the Elk Ridge is, I would say most would probably put it in the top 6 to 7 units in the state. Of course, I'm a little bit biased. I feel like it's 3rd or 4th best in the state. Obviously, Utah has the Henry's unit and the Paunsaugunt unit that are exceptional. We're very successful in Elk Ridge, both on the archery rifle muzzleloader. We find ourselves chasing 190 plus inch to several, usually 200 plus inch deer every year. The general side, it really depends on how much effort a person wants to put into a hunt. Just like any hunt that has large hunter numbers, if you just want to drive roads and look around and do a little glassing, it's going to be tough to kill a big mature trophy buck. In the last few years, the Abajo side has definitely been coming on strong. We're finding ourselves every year chasing, seeing some of our guides are harvesting 170 to 180 plus inch deer on the Abajo unit during the archery hunt. So,
gotcha. And then, do you guys have any private ground that if you drew the general season tag, the general season deer tag, can you also hunt private over there?
We do have access to a little bit, and it's kind of a trespass fee type deal. Obviously, we still have our guide fee, but we do have access to some land that if a client wants to get away from the hustle and bustle, we can pay the landowner a trespass fee and hunt some private that has great deer. I mean, I think a realistic goal for the Abajo side is a 140 to 170 type mule deer. And we also do some group hunts too, where we'll put in, or we'll have guys put in as groups of 3 or 4 and come out and do archery deer and cow spike elk hunts, kind of as a combo hunt. So
Okay. And I'm kind of bouncing all around here, but I'm looking at the archery San Juan Elk Ridge on Go Hunt here, and in 2016, first, there's 9 resident archery tags and 1 non-resident. So in the situation where there's only 1 non-resident, correct me if I'm wrong, but that's a random draw, meaning the guy with 20 points gets his name in the hat 20 times, but it doesn't give him preference, the 50% preference, so it goes totally random. Like last year, a guy with 13 points drew. There were 4 guys with 13 points, and the guy randomly drew that tag, correct?
that is correct. Yeah. So you'll see a lot of times non-residents, they won't be applying for. There again, here's another great feature of Go Hunt. You can also find this information on the division website. Is they're going to look and go, okay, I've got a pile of points. I've got 19, 20, 21, 22 points. I need to apply in a unit that has a bonus tag because it's going to quadruple or 10 times my odds of drawing that tag. So you'll actually have a lot of guys with extremely high numbers of tags shying away from the units that don't have a bonus tag.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, that makes sense where they know that they may get more names in the hat, so to speak, but that anybody could draw at any point level, so that their preference, in other words, if you have super high points, putting in for a 1 tag unit doesn't really give you super odds over the guy that has 3 points. I mean, it gives you a little bit more, but not significantly more. So if you have a ton of points, you need to use those in units that have more than 1 tag, correct?
Yep, that would have a bonus tag available.
Okay, sounds good. I want to ask you about, I want to shift a little bit talking about the elk, and are there spike and cow over-the-counter archery tags during the limited entry archery elk season on the San Juan unit?
There are. It's a general spike tag. They still cap it. You can buy it over the counter, but it does have a cap. Once they hit X amount, and I'm not sure what that number is this year, but once they hit X amount, then they cap it. You can't purchase anymore. They go on sale typically, I believe, in June after the antlerless drawings.
Okay. And
so with that tag, that spike tag on the archery hunt, you can shoot a cow.
Okay, so you can shoot a spike or a cow. And is that cap that you talk about different from other units like the beaver or the boulder, or is that specific to the San Juan where they actually cap those, or do they also cap them in all those other units as well?
I believe it's unit specific. So the San Juan will have a different number than beaver, boulder, any of those other units. So it's not a statewide cap, if that's what you're asking.
I guess what I'm asking is, you're talking, it's probably in the thousands, though, the cap. I mean, like most people, if they want a spike and cow archery tag, they can get it. Most people can get
Yes.
it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's definitely, like I said, they go on sale, and you can get on the Utah Division of Wildlife page, and it'll tell you when those go on sale. You definitely don't want to waste time. I mean, you want to try to purchase it the day they go on sale, if not, within a few days of them going on sale, because if you try a month later, there's a good chance they're going to be gone.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also want you to speak a little bit about the conservation tags. How how those conservation tags work for both deer and elk on the San Juan unit, and give me a little breakdown, a rough breakdown of like what those tags typically sell for over the last couple of years. And you can speak in fairly general terms in explaining that if you want.
Sure. So what a lot of people don't realize is there's actually two different tags here when we're talking about this. There's the division does give conservation organizations like SFW, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, National Wild Turkey Federation, SCI. They give them tags to auction those tags off, and the money goes back to conservation, gets poured back into conservation of these animals. There is also landowner tags that the San Juan also has available, and basically it's, collectively a landowners association has X amount of acres, so the division also gives them landowner tags, basically saying, we understand that these animals destroy your property and eat your cattle's food and destroy stuff, so we're giving you these tags to auction them off and hopefully compensate some of the damage that these animals create on your property. So there are also landowner tags available. The only reason I mention that is because a lot of times the landowners association actually give them to these conservation organizations to auction at their banquets also. The landowners association keeps the majority of the money, and the conservation organization keeps a portion of it. So if you look up, conservation tag numbers, there's usually quite a few more for auction than it shows that were given to a conservation organization, because typically they're also including, those landowner, or you're at the auction seeing these landowner tags also. So let's just say San Juan, Elk Ridge, for the elk, I believe there's typically usually between 7 and 9 between landowner and conservation tags. And then for the deer, there's typically 4 to 5 for the deer tags. The elk have always went high. They trend high, they trend low. We're definitely in a high trend right now. A few years ago, you could pick a deal up and get one maybe for $17,000 to $22,000. They've been pretty consistently the last couple of years, well in excess of $30,000, if not approaching $40,000 for the tags.
Is there a discrepancy between the archery and the rifle? I mean, I would assume the archery goes for less, but there's very few tags, so maybe they're all about the same price.
Yeah, so the landowner tags are typically choose your season, so they can actually, when they auction those ones off, you buy it and you can pick what season you want. There's usually, every year they typically will either do a archery only or a muzzleloader only, and usually it goes for less money, yes. Still, the last few years, incredibly high. They also do a premium, which you can hunt all seasons with, and they typically, that one actually just sold at the Western Hunting Expo last week for $55,000, because the person that has it can hunt archery, rifle, muzzleloader, late rifle. So. And
on that premium, just so I heard you correctly, the premium tag in Utah means you can hunt all of those seasons. You don't have to pick a season. You can hunt all of them. And in other words, you could hunt the archery, you could hunt the muzzleloader, you could hunt the early rifle, and then you could end up killing the bull in the late hunt, correct?
Correct, yep. And they also do give out premium tags also, or there is a draw process for premium tags also on most units.
And that's in the Hunt Expo tags, where you can actually just for $5 or whatever be the lucky winner.
No. Sorry, what I meant there was they actually have a premium tag in the draw system. So when someone is applying for a tag through the Division of Wildlife, most units also have the option for a premium tag.
Oh, okay, I understand. Okay. Yeah, it's Utah's system is. How do you like the draw system, and is there anything that you would change about it, or do you like it?
I I actually like the draw system. Of course, the point creep is going to happen, and it's going to keep climbing, and so it's always going to be tough to draw tag, but I like it far better than, say, Colorado, where you basically have to have the maximum number of points or you don't have a chance. I mean, they have the hybrid draw in Colorado now, but it's a very small chance. Every single year, especially with non-residents, we take a lot of the non-resident hunters. So many of them have 3, 4, 5, 6 points and draw, so they really do have a legitimate chance of drawing, a once in a lifetime tag in a relatively short time. So
let's talk about the timing of the archery season, and I'm talking specifically about elk starting, I believe, around the 19th of, I think this year coming up, it's starting the 19th or so of August, and then it ends, I believe, on the 15th or 16th of September. As a guide, outfitter, and a hunter that hunts that unit, walk me through kind of the timing of the season and how things change as that season progresses.
Sure. So really just as the hunt starting or right before the hunt starts, the bulls are just stripping their velvet. A lot of times within days of the hunt is when they start stripping. The problem is, this, when they strip, they instantly, their pattern changes. So we see this a lot. A lot of guys scout all summer long. They're seeing these giant bulls. They are feeling great about it. All of a sudden, the hunt opens. The bulls are pretty much silent. You might hear occasional bugle here and there, but all of a sudden, those bulls all just disappear within days before the hunt, and these guys are already in panic mode. So really, the first week to 2 weeks of the hunt, your best bet by far is going to be sitting water or sitting salt. After 2 weeks, you're going to start noticing them starting to pick up with the bugling. But really, it's not until the last week of the hunt that the rut is. It's still early stages of rut, and so it's hit or miss like early rut is. Some mornings they'll be going really well, and other mornings you won't hardly hear anything. So when we book archery hunters, we always book them the last week of the hunt because rut stages wise is by far the best. The rut typically doesn't peak until the rifle hunt.
And so with that rifle hunt starting the day after the archery hunt ends, in other words, there's no break. It just goes from archery ending on the 16th to the 17th starts the rifle. It's really amped up during that hunt, is it not?
Yeah, the rut is very few people get to experience it like we do. I'm sure you've been in some of those situations. It's an absolute rutting frenzy. A lot of times the bulls, they know you're there and they don't even care. Once a cow comes into estrus, we've literally been in situations where there's been a herd bull with 3 cows and there's 10 or 12 other bulls dogging and harassing and fighting, and it's an elk hunter's dream. I mean, it's an experience that very few people get to experience.
From an outfitting perspective, bouncing back to the archery elk season with that spike and cow hunt, how much disturbance do the spike and cow hunters cause the limited entry hunters in your mind, or do they spread out pretty good and it's not a real problem?
They spread out fairly well. The weekends are tough, obviously. Most cow and spike hunters are just weekend hunters, so you have the weekdays typically to yourself. We hunt the deer the first week of the archery season because they're still in a summer pattern. It affects the deer hunting way more than it does the elk hunting, because the elk hunting, most aren't hunting or getting serious until the last 2 weeks, and the cow spike hunters are typically done by then. But it definitely affects the deer hunt.
Interesting. And then the muzzleloader elk season is after the what I would call the early rifle season. And how is that muzzleloader hunt? Are they still bugling to beat the band, or have they been jostled around pretty good between the archery and the early rifle? Or to some years is that muzzleloader hunt the best bugling of the whole year?
Yeah, some years it can actually be the very best hunt. Now, a lot of the bulls that people have been watching all summer, a lot of those big bulls have been harvested, but that's, the San Juan is a huge unit. It's a deep unit. It's nasty. It's thick. It's steep. There are bulls that nobody knows exist on that unit, and it seems like your best bet to have one of those giants come out of the depths seems to almost always be in the muzzleloader season.
Gotcha. How is the antler breakage during the muzzleloader season?
You're definitely there's a fair amount. It really, even by the middle to end of the rifle season, you're definitely sorting over bulls that have broken tines.
And then the very next season would be, or the last season would be the late elk hunt. The late elk hunt on the San Juan can be one of the best hunts of the whole deal, right? And if so, if you agree with that, tell me why.
It's actually not. It is by far the toughest hunt on the San Juan.
Oh, it is.
And it's one of the tougher hunts in the state. When that hunt came out, it's probably been 8 or 9 years ago, we had high hopes for it. Most guys had high hopes for it. We learned really quickly that, first of all, a lot of the bulls actually leave the unit to go over into basically an any bull unit to winter. And then a lot of them are dropping off into you would just have to see the San Juan unit to understand there's some of the most wicked, deepest, nastiest country you've ever seen. It's just almost impossible to hunt an elk in when they're bugling, let alone when they're, hiding out and trying to recover from the rut. So, and then the bull to cow ratio is insane on the San Juan unit. So, late hunt, it's really tough to find an intact bull. As a rule of thumb, we pretty much tell our hunters, any 350 plus bull that's intact, you really should be considering shooting even on the first day, as opposed to, say, our rifle hunts. We're typically gunning for 370 plus bulls. Now, that being said, in the last few years, we personally have started to really figure it out and have some spots that are looking up, and I think we've harvested a 380 plus bull in the last 3 late hunts. So, but most people you run into in the late hunt, they're struggling with it. A lot of them end up shooting 3-4-year-old bulls that some of them aren't even breaking 300 inches.
Really?
Yeah.
How much do you know about the other units in Utah other than the San Juan? I mean, have you hunted a bunch of the other units, or have you stayed pretty focused on the San Juan unit?
Mostly San Juan and LaSalle. Obviously, some of our guides, know guys in other units and do stuff on other units. I mean, I feel like we have a fairly good grasp of what other units are the top units. But we don't personally go and hunt and guide in them.
Let's talk about the LaSalle a little bit. I'm looking at the archery on the LaSalle, and it looks like, speaking about non-residents, the highest point holder last year, well, first of all, looking at this Go Hunt Insider, there were 25 resident tags and 3 non-resident tags. And so this would obviously fall into, there is a bonus tag, correct? And it looks
Yes.
like the highest point holder was 12 points, and that person drew in 2016. And then the next point, the guy with 7 points drew, and then there was someone with 4 points that drew that tag. How is that hunt for quality on the LaSalle compared to, not compared to the San Juan, just talk about the LaSalle in general. How is that hunt? How does the terrain differ? And, what kind of quality can someone expect on there?
Sure. So LaSalle's it's still a really great hunt. Typically in the archery hunt, we're telling our clients that a 320 to 340 bull is a very good bull. During the rifle hunt, we're gunning more for that 330 to occasionally 370 range, but I'd say 330 to 360 type elk hunt. It's a steep mountain. It's a thick mountain. There are some lower flat stuff, but seems like the majority of the elk and where we do the majority of our hunting is in the thicker, steeper stuff. Still a very fun hunt, great unit, good rutting. We're running into, over the last couple of years, I think we're running into a lot of people that are just coming to the realization that even though they have 16, 17, 18 points, they still potentially could be several years out on San Juan. And some of these gentlemen and ladies are getting up to, 55, 60, 65 years old. So we've actually had a fair amount of people switching and putting in for LaSalle because it's still a great hunt. And, we've gotten pretty spoiled in the last 10 years, with the caliber elk that really all states have been killing, that sometimes we forget that a 350 bull is still a giant bull, and that's a very realistic expectation on LaSalle.
Okay, that's good to know, and I'm sure the listeners will appreciate that. I've got a couple follow-up questions about, you also do Colorado lion over-the-counter hunts. So if someone comes with you, can they hunt? Can they logistically hunt a lion in Colorado and a lion in Utah in the same hunt, or do you not try and do that?
Sure. I've had a couple people toy with the idea. Nobody has, but yeah, we could, spend 5 days in Colorado, harvest a lion, and then go over to Utah, which is only an hour away, and harvest a second lion.
And what would you say your prime months for chasing hounds for specifically lions? Is it going on right now, or when is the prime month or two?
Sure. So in Colorado, it seems like November and December typically are our best months. We hunt a little bit more high country. Usually by January, the snow is getting sometimes unmanageable. So November, December in Colorado. Utah, I would say, is December, January, February are probably the prime months for snow conditions. If you want to do a dirt lion hunt, where we do a lot more hiking with the hounds and out in the canyons, rather than driving around and looking for tracks, we're hiking canyons that we know or hope there are lions in and just letting the hounds start the lion. Then usually October, November, and March and April are the best months for those style of hunts.
Okay, good stuff. I heard you mention earlier about turkeys. I'm a bit of a turkey nut myself, mm-hmm. And from what I understand, the San Juan is covered up in turkeys.
Yes, yeah, it's really starting to come back. I think it was the winter of 2010. We just had a brutal winter, and I was talking to one of the division wildlife officers, and he said they figured that they had probably an 85% winter kill, and it was tough for a few years, but they have come back and they are in full force. It's we run into a lot of turkeys. We guide spring turkey hunters, but we're also bear hunting, and there's probably no place you could go anywhere that you can get into more Merriams and more vocal Merriams turkeys in the spring.
And how does how do those are by draw in Utah, correct?
So it's a split unit. So the month of April, or there's specific dates in April, but it's almost the entire month, is a draw-only hunt. They then have an over-the-counter hunt in May. The hunting's still good. If a person was to do May, you definitely would want to do the first week or two in May. But by far the premium season would be the draw that you're hunting them in April.
Well, that sounds good. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today. I want to give you a chance, Randy, to let the listeners know where they can find more about you guys, how to contact you guys. I know this draw, for the listeners out there, I believe the deadline is March 2nd. I believe that's Thursday coming up here. And this podcast is going to air here. I'm going to turn it around quickly so that people can hear that. How can they get a hold of you?
Sure. So you can either go to our website, which is www.blacktimberoutfitters.net, or if anybody has any questions, they can also email me. It is randy@blacktimberoutfitters.net, and feel free to give me a call. I love to talk hunting. I'll be realistic with what your odds are, what kind of expectations for a hunt you can have. We can make something work for you. It's our passion, not harvesting giant animals. Helping people harvest once in a lifetime trophies is what we live for. So.
Well, Randy, I appreciate you spending time here. You definitely live in a beautiful part of the world. I've got friends that live in Cortez, and the San Juan. I have not hunted it, but I've driven through that Monticello area and Blanding, and it's just a beautiful, beautiful mountain. And look forward to hunting it someday for turkeys or maybe even a general deer or spiking cow or something like that. So I want to encourage the listeners to check out Randy and Josh's site, blacktimberoutfitters.net, and make sure to get a hold of Randy. And I appreciate you spending time here with us today talking about Utah.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
All right, buddy. You take care and God bless, okay?